I want to welcome everyone to our first Hello, My Name Is lecture series brought to you by the Graphic Design Department and the Hoffmitz Milken Center for Typography. This is Sean Adams, the chair of both graduate and undergraduate department. I'm Gloria Condrup, the executive director of the Hoffmitz Milken Center for Typography. And we're going to have a wonderful conversation with our guest, Cheryl Miller, an outsized influence within the graphic design profession to end the marginalization of BIPOC designers through her civil rights activism, industry expose trade writing. I love the word expose, Cheryl, research, rigor, and archival vision. Cheryl is a national leader of many minority rights, gender, race, diversity, equality, and inclusion, advocacy, and graphic design. You're an author, an educator, a designer. I can just go on and on and on. I think you bring to the table, Cheryl, an incredible amount of knowledge, especially for our students. Sean, do you have anything else you want to add before?
Cheryl has won every award under the planet, right? Like, there's nothing she hasn't won. I mean, she's an AJ medalist. She's a Cooper Hewitt National Design Awardee. She's, an IBM design scholar and one Club Creative Hall. I mean, it just goes on and on. And I mean, she's a magnificent human being. So, we were so lucky that she joined us. And I mean, she's a perfect fit for Art Center. And the work she's done so far in CD3, I haven't seen such exciting, really amazing work in a long time. I mean, it's just truly remarkable. And maybe rethink that entire class, what she and Tracy have done such a magnificent job. And now, of course, she's going to be teaching in the grad program. And so we're using her as much as we can. So
Cheryl, we're going to turn it over to you and Sean to ask any questions, or I would just like you to start about what is it we should know. And I mean, obviously it can take 3 hours of what you've learned, but what do you think is important right now for us to address, especially in design education?
Okay. Well, first off, I want to thank all. I don't want to forget. I want to remember everyone and forget no one, and just thank all of Art Center for having me. When you're truly valued and thought of, it's the greatest gift. And I'm honored to be here and to share. What I'd like to do, Gloria, is I want to run through really quickly a presentation that I'm often asked to give. It's a survey of all of my work that's now collected. My professional archives are collected at Stanford University. And we can talk about all these things. And what I'd like to do is answer that question in context to the road that I've traveled. Because I think that where we are today, I've experienced the pain and now maybe the gain of the journey to be able to have some type of poignant answer that is not always accepted, but when it's embraced, I guarantee transformative results. And so the places that have embraced me, and I'm convinced that where the design industry is in academia and profession in the industry, it's a collaborative work. For us to grow, we really have to do it together, and we have to learn from one another. And I'm being invited into these spaces where I've really have gathered partners to address and to help the new dominant culture and demographic of the student body that I'm finding across America is so diverse. And the tension is that design administration and the professor pool, pretty traditional, is not matching up with the way the demographic is in the audience of student scholar. And there's been this tension going and brewing, God knows, since forever, but our current political and cultural tensions of this era from pandemic and everything that we've been going through. And social media has given across the globe, the student body, a voice that in my first rodeo of advocacy, we didn't have. And so now we have change. And with that, there's so many areas of opportunity to address the change and to bring new process, new thinking, new products, new results to answer the new demand. So what I'd like to do is we can come back and we can talk about it, ask me any question. And let me scroll quickly through a presentation that I call Designing in the Dark. And quickly you will see that I was designing in the dark. That's all I can say. So this is the theme of this lecture. And if you follow me, I have lots of lectures on LinkedIn. I want to thank everyone who follows me around social media for my crazy lectures. This one is a little storytelling and a look at my portfolio and the trajectory of how I got here. Designing in the dark. I started off a kid and ended up in New York City with this advocacy and a firm. Now we call Cheryl Miller Design New York Social Impact Graphic Design, but that's not what it was back there. Cheryl was just hustling, trying to make it in New York City. Now we have all kinds of language of, I had a firm that was developing corporate communications after the civil rights era and the storytelling of disenfranchised, marginalized community. I'm a communications designer, and now we call it social impact graphic design. And was I one of the first? And definitely one of the first women of color doing that in the 80s in New York City. All of my work now is at Stanford University, and in this lecture, you're going to see how I got there. I have a unique perspective on my clientele. I service Fortune 500 companies, breaking ground in corporate iconography for diversity, equality, and inclusion in the 80s. And then usually those corporate Fortune 500 companies had national organizations that they sponsored. And so typically one client made to the Fortune 500 and a national African-American organization that they were in relationship with sponsorships, and I ended up doing work for one. So one client always made and gave me the reach for two clients, which was really an interesting model, which helped me business-wise to have a storefront, designers, lease equipment, etc. I had a solid business in New York City. I went to art school. You can go on Google and see every place I've been. Back when I was young and through the civil rights era, I figured the only way to tackle this was to prove that I was trained. And so I have a graduate degree from Pratt. I have a BFA from MICA. I started foundation studies at Rhode Island School of Design, and I had an unfortunate life event 2 weeks before my sophomore year. My father passed away, and I had to leave Rhode Island and get back home. I'm from the Mid-Atlantic. I had to get back home to my mom, my young mom, and my young teenage brother. And Micah took me in, kind of like a pick up a phone. We've got a kid in distress. She can't come back to RISD. Micah, can you take her? And so that whole story led through. I graduated from MICA and was in the early ages of my career. I was a television designer, broadcast designer, 10 years, to kind of locate that. Oprah was in Baltimore and Gayle King and I worked at the same station. I was a graphic designer and she was a news intern. And so that's when I started, where I started. 1982 on a corporate move. I ended up going to New York and opening the firm, being found in my advocacy, graduating from Pratt, and the practice and all of, the years of the entire career. I'm honored with the major design awards that we all aspire to, but my community has recognized my work, to which I'm honored. And I've been awarded, my alma maters have come back for me. I've had the privilege in this season to have a Doctor of Humane Letters from Vermont College of Fine Arts, Doctor of Fine Arts from MICA and RISD. And I am very proud to say that in May, I'll be awarded the same, the Doctor of Fine Arts from Pratt. I'm their keynote speaker for graduation. So all of the work and in my class that I'm sharing with Mike, all of this comes, and you'll see in this story, it came from a thesis. And so let's go over the career, but it was, I think in my thinking as a young person planning, that I kind of, given the era of designing in the dark, I needed to be kind of over the top. So I've journeyed, I went to art school. Uniquely, I am BIPOC, and with that, I have 4 grandparents, 4 different places, 4 different races, very, very unique, which comes to my design scholarship. I am a derivative work of my maternal family, which is indigenous Danish West Indian, from the Danish and Ghanaian slave trade. And from that story comes all of my current work with studying the trajectory of the slave artisan and bringing that trade into the ports of Williamsburg. And I do in my lectures and in my research and in my writing, honor the slave artisan as the first Black designer who was missing in the canonical story because he was in slavery. This is a broad picture. My father and my mother met at Howard University. I was born before the Civil Rights era, coming of age through the Civil Rights era, and practiced design post-Civil Rights era. So I've gone through a lot of technology. And so my early remembrance of things begins with the birthing of television, kind of like the kids now are on iPad. You know, I came through the era of radio shows turning to television shows and journeyed. I'm going to move along, but there's a lot in this story about my influences of art, why I left Washington, and it's a rich coming of age story that was birthed in the Civil Rights era and born to mixed race parents and raised in Washington, D.C. Unique in this story is I am part Filipino as well. My mother was Filipino Creole, and all from this incredible Danish West Indian story. My grandfather found himself with the U.S. Navy at the sale of the Danish West Indies to the United States, better known now as U.S. Virgin Islands, and met my grandmother, and all of this, what my mother would call rugadoo, a West Indian term, rugadoo. All of this comes to the table of conversation that I've had to work through, and it's a part of my scholarship now and part of my story. So mixed race, mixed heritage, you know, all of this. And then I do claim I was raised African-American, came through a time when, you know, one drop ruling. My father said it was best to have one culture. And so I was raised in DC, hand dancing, and I'm an African-American kid. But at home, all of this ethnicity and culture and race, I could really, at the time, I could only really be one thing. So it's really nice now that I don't have to be undercover with all of this. I'm with now everybody who's, I'm everybody's tia, auntie. I'm in your family somewhere. That's America. But when I was growing up, yeah, I suffocated in one drop. I'm known for my trade. I'm a trade writer. We're gonna look about how that happened. I write for print. I write for communication arts. I am a guest contributor, especially right through here. I have a lot of my essays are being published because publishing now has turned and is very interested in publishing designers of color to meet the need to hit the academic bibliographies. So I've got forwards and essays that are forthcoming. I am a design writer. It all started with this thesis, the Pratt, I call it the infamous Pratt thesis. I was not allowed to, I was given a charge. I was not allowed to create a design-based thesis project to graduate. They talked about me, the chair and the department, and said that would be too easy for me, and told me to make a contribution to the industry. And I analyzed the erasure, the low percentage, the dearth of Black designers, the dearth, just the void of us in a work transcending the problems of the Black graphic designer to success in the marketplace, published 1985. It turned into and the story of all of this, I've lectured how this happened. Oh my God, how this happened. I have YouTube lectures. The thesis published almost immediately. It was published by Print Magazine in 1987, which was my first trade article. And Carolyn Hightower, the president of AIGA, responded immediately. My office, like, oh my God, the phones were off the hook. I mean, the magazine dropped, and all of a sudden I was like zoomed to the national platform. And I think my voice has been there ever since. It was like an immediate, oh my God. And I would love to say it was for the best design project in the whole wide world, but it was not. It was for the care and the advocacy of equal rights for all of us. The thesis and the article did in fact open the door of conversation, beginning with our industry organization, the AIGA, and Carolyn Hightower quickly formulated, the department and conferences, and getting busy with a time in New York where corporate responsibility and citizenship was high, and the design industry needed to respond to it. And the thesis and the article became a trigger and started the conversation. Why is graphic design 93% white? Removing barriers to increase opportunities in graphic design. It's their next conference, and all of the newsletters started the same way. Cheryl Miller had no idea that when she wrote this article. I still had no idea that when I did this thesis that we would be here today and I would be before you. I wrote again, another contribution in 2016, Black designers still missing in action. All of these are online. There's a landing page for print. You can get all of my articles and the thesis, all of the things that have been digitized thus far out of my collection, you can find online at Stanford University. And definitely, if I'm teaching you, I can upload it to Canvas. During the pandemic, I really wanted to get to the bottom line of this issue for us, beyond race, the systemic racist practices, white supremacy, and all this conversation just fast forwarded to the, up in our face from the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Oh my goodness, we exploded again from the civil rights era of Black designers coming to the table of conversation in New York after Martin Luther King was assassinated. Here we are at the rodeo again, and I wrote for print. They contracted me for 1,500 words. I wrote 14,000 words, and Zach, who was the editor then, says, "Cheryl, we've never published an article this long, but we're gonna keep every word, break it up into 4 parts." And I tackled the conversation once and for all. My business, Cheryl Miller Design, everybody and anybody that would do business with me in New York was on 6th Avenue. And all of the ledgers, all of the design thinking, the job jackets, everything that had anything to do with my practice is now at Stanford. But the primary, how I could be in business is I had corporate clients. In the collection are all of PR photos and documents because I was writing, I was being, citations, AIGA, here's someone clipped, I didn't even know AIGA sent it to me, pictures of me out in Minneapolis at, by this time now I'm on a national platform, so I'm judging contests and been very active in the business since I got published. Always winning corporate awards, Women in Business Awards. Again, I'm in New York City. So in an era where women in business initiatives in New York and nationally were on the forefront. And so I've been recognized richly as an entrepreneur and as business by my clients and the New York corporate base. Just more of me with Stanford. These are pictures that were taken in my home. Stanford came to pick up all of my work. There were several back in the day. We have LinkedIn now, but we had a few recruiting agencies. We've got Creative Circle and LinkedIn doing a lot of our work now, but back then there were two that you walked around with your large portfolio, and Roz Goldfarb Associates was a recruiter, and we partnered with her to bring talent, diverse talent into her agency for representation. So I partnered with placing designers, and now if you're with me on LinkedIn, I always have a little repost right here. You'll see me, I post jobs, and I want you guys to have opportunity that I never had. And starts with, there weren't, the opportunities now are unbelievable. So LinkedIn right now is my, where I post up really great jobs. So this is, along the way, I just stayed active with AIGA, and before the medal, they had what they call the design journey profiles. And that was dedicated to designers of diverse designers and designers of color. Maybe not represented as a medalist, but nonetheless recognizable and notable. And so I had a design journey profile 2014, which kind of led the way for continued, voice and presence and acknowledgement. And so the firm is going along, and I'm writing, and I've got this national voice. It was one more inquiry for my thesis that led to Stanford coming to my house to pick up I Had Saved Everything. And I always tell all of my students, you don't know where you're going, what's going to happen to you. I cataloged everything, and they came and really the head collections librarian. They came from Palo Alto all the way over to Stamford, Connecticut. I live outside of New York City, and I had saved everything, logged everything. The only thing I hadn't done was to put everything in acid-free boxes in archival folders. So we repacked the entire 50-year collection from 1974 to 1994, my entire office, and which was chock full of not only the artwork, the business work, the business files, but all of the interviews, all of the drafts for all of the writing. They took cassette recordings. I had recorded so many people, Paul Rand, oh my God, just all kinds of things over the course of writing. So all of those notes that never made, content in an article, but it's a part of the research that's necessary to write a really good trade article. So all of the research, the drafts, the cassettes, it was more than just my portfolio. There you can see in the background, before I released it all to Stanford, everything was boxed up, and just everything in my office. It's unbelievable. The whole career. And I'd saved everything from the time I was a kid, right? So I had high school portfolio, everything. Here, I signed off on the papers, and the tractor trailer met Regina. She was going to be flying out, and she loaded up the collection, and off to Stanford Libraries it went. You'll see this artifact around and I don't want to go into each piece, but this was a NASA commission, and I want to shout out to Charles Lilly, who is best known for the cover illustration of Malcolm X, autobiography of Malcolm X. There are incredible stories for all of these clients, people that I met, people that I photographed, artists that I work with. Cheryl Miller Design was the place. Cheryl Miller, it was the studio, it was the firm happening for stopping by, portfolio reviews. I gave everybody work. It was a real good run. We're just going to scale through some of the work. So where it translates now is I teach design history, decolonizing graphic design from a Black perspective. I don't care if anybody remembers any of the Black perspective. The course focuses on how to pull forth your story, because your story is important in the history of the canon, and you guys are the new history makers, storytellers. And so it's a how-to class to bring those new stories from wherever you come. We work real hard and lay it in over the canonical history. You have to know your canonical history, but there's so much more. And so all of that work now is I teach history, and then uniquely now I'm at Howard University teaching that class. And this is the first 3-credit university college credit class, specifically the history of Black graphic design. So I have two scholarly, courses, and I'm also at University of Texas with branding for diversity. And so in our time together here with Mike, it's thesis development, because my thesis brought me here. And I was very intentional. It wasn't an accident how I wrote the thesis. So, I shared that being capstone teacher thesis, juror critic for thesis classes, and I'm called all over for that. And so I'm honored to be with the graduate area sharing thesis development. I'm here because of my thesis. I know how to do a thesis. With Tracy, I'm sharing my publication background, and the firm was best known. By the time I got to New York City, I resolved it into annual report and corporate publications. And so I'll just scale through some of these pieces. This is all before Macintosh, so a lot of the printing process and techniques, I had to lean into good old when graphic design was graphic design and printing production was printing production, being creative with papers and inks and tints, and all kinds of things to make corporate brochures using the grid. And during a time when, this is an example, where corporations were beginning to change their iconography to include people of color and multiracial, multi-ethnic iconography in their books. Everything started changing. So a lot of these projects came to my office because we knew how to do that. I mean, we knew how to do it, but even more so, we knew the treatment that was necessary to transition a dominant white iconography into a changing time and platform for corporate America. These are the illustrations of Gil Ashby. He's still very active. You can find him on Instagram. He's a professor of illustration out in the Midwest. And so we always gave my friends work, the ones that were extremely competitive. And so we did corporate holding the grid, working with photography. I'm a publication designer. What attracted Stanford to my collection was not the pretty books necessarily, but I'm storytelling very, very important African-American history in the African-American organization of ephemeral and portfolio pieces. So the documentation of our leaders and our stories are in the publications that I've designed. And so this is an example of a beautiful spread for the Joint Center for Political Studies, and their anniversary at the time, I think it's 1970 to 1995, a 20-year trajectory. So a lot of my books are actually history books. And we did all of all the important national African-American organizations that had corporate sponsors. So the corporate sponsors, in most cases, paid my bill and used me as in-kind service. So again, one client typically made two, the Fortune 500, who had a commitment to a national African-American organization. I did work for both. One client always made two, and thus I have this corporate portfolio and then a not-for-profit portfolio that's specifically to the African-American community. And a lot of the work was before Macintosh. And so old school type specking and really stylizing and working with type. I'm a typographer with that, and I'm like, oh my God, InDesign put all of New York Type House out, but but I know, way in my memory bank, this is how we did books. Design is design, and so we've got lots of these. I had all these little treatments and things to enhance book because we didn't have all the layering and the skewing and so forth. So Sean, back when graphic design was graphic design, Cheryl commanded all of these things in the grid and had clients and told the story. You'll see BET conversation online. Yeah, from the very, very beginning, I designed with Bob Johnson the first on-air BET prototype. Great story, don't have time to tell it. When they became on the stock market, by this time, this transitional pieces from camera ready art to digital, these were all beginning of digital work with Macintosh, and translating now, all camera ready, paste up, all that. New York has all changed. The businesses are gone, everything. Apple and Mac, okay, and Quark Express, Photoshop and Illustrator closed down New York, just like AI is trying to do, trying to take us all out of business. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And I want to shout out to Fo Wilson, who was one of our first magazine, is your Black History Note, first hip hop magazine art directors, referred me into McDonald's. We did advertorials. We helped corporate America on 6th Avenue develop the advertorial magazine inserts that look like editorial, and the job was to create content that would fit within the context of a magazine. And so this is McDonald's first hip hop calendar, 1990, 91. And so we kind of led the way for the first hip hop graphics and periodicals. Just more pieces. And again, this is what I don't have time, but this is one of my favorite stories. Charles Lilly is known for that illustration. And I said, Charles, come, we've got a NASA commission. And I love to honor him in this story. He did the portrait of Mae Jemison, which is first African-American astronaut, female astronaut. And she launched 1992 as a NASA commission. And in appreciation, he gave me 12 of his last posters. And if you ever hear the lecture about me and Charles, it's a good one. And he did illustrations for me. Aaron Douglas inspired with my slave artists and graphics for the Congressional Black Caucus. This is a popular poster you'll see online. All these, one way or the other, I can't name them all, but art director, they were either published, art director club awards, recognized. And all of this is going on. I'm designing, and all of this, I'm proud to say, before Adobe, I handcrafted all of the lettering and letter forms, all before Illustrator. This is the work of Yvonne Buchanan, and we had a beautiful run of introducing Chase Manhattan into Harlem. She just retired from University of Syracuse in illustration. And if you were in New York and, I thought your work was stellar, and especially photographers, everybody wanted, can I get a Cheryl Miller design book? And so I'm really proud of how many I was able to extend opportunity to either illustrate, design, photograph, photography. The contents, all of my notes, it proves the story. Sketches, design thinking. This is a favorite logo sheet that's all around, and I am proud to say these logos and many, many more sheets are all hand done, old school. No, Sean, I'm in New York with Herb Llewellyn and Tom Carnese and, Kirk Brown and myself. We were the folks of color doing the same thing on the other side of the street. And I was fortunate enough to have a stat camera, and you had to have a stat camera to do these things. So imagine a dark room for a stat camera was the price of a studio in New York. So we were competitive, and all these letter forms, and this is one of my favorite sheets. It gets published and asked for, can we have rights to publish? And I'm like, sure, take. But the collection has most of my logos and other things, but this is a popular sheet. And I think what touches my heart, no Adobe in sight, guys. Everybody wants to know about my personal life. And so the collection has all of my, family photos and things. And you'll see me on Instagram with Miller now. We've been together with this since we were teenagers. And so he's my art handler. He's a corporate guy. He's the one, it's his job, took us into New York. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I found my way. For those of faith, oh my God, it was so hard. Cheryl Waldron and I wrote a little prayer, the Black Designers Creed for strength. And so these are all little ephemeral of how things that were in my collection. They took everything, all my notes, everything. Really, I always like to make sure you understand how I did this quickly. Be the first. I will never say that I'm the only one, but when you have an idea, launch out on it first. And all of those who stop by, one of the ones that I'm most proud of is my nephew. I call him my nephew. He calls me Auntie Trey Seals. You guys know him. And he'll always tell you that he came to me with an idea. And I said, Trey, if you don't do it, somebody else will. Hurry. And now he's an award-winning type designer. He had an idea of creating fonts from the original brushstrokes from the civil rights posters, and Trey is Trey. And my motto, all of my keynotes, there'll be more, but if you can be first brand name recognition, don't wait on a good idea. You want to be first. You won't be the only one, but you'll be the first. And find a niche and fill a void. Learn the business. And I'm going to leave you with this. Living your life for yourself is your story. Living your life for others is your legacy. Leave a legacy. And there it goes. Heading to California is Regina. 50 boxes, 50 years, leaving my hands, but not my life. So I'm going to leave you here and stop sharing. And I'm also happy to say that I started another collection in 2 spots. The history of Black graphic design is at Stanford. I'm going around to really deceased designers and their families and picking up, dad and auntie's boxes that, family members know, oh, my, dad had an important career. We don't know what it is. We didn't throw it away. Miss Miller, thank God you came by. Can we have it? Yeah, we want you to have it. So we have, we've got this Black graphic design archival project, and Stanford is supporting that. I bring in family archives, and also duplicates, and also relationship with primary source materials from the families. We've opened up the same collection at the Herb Llewellyn Center at Cooper Union. That's Cheryl Miller, and I'm with you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl, I have a question. So where are these archives going to be stored? I mean, the Black Designers Archives, are they at Stanford or are they Herb Llewellyn?
Both.
Stanford.
We
Both.
have
Really?
2. So one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. And so the collections are coming in. I'll be going out. They're planning for me to come out. I'm coming out I don't know, March maybe.
Right.
And I'll be talking at Stanford about the collection, how many we've brought in. We've brought in a lot of designers.
Yeah,
And
because we know, yeah, it's very difficult to have an archive. I mean, we have one here at the HMCT, based on, typography, and those especially who are, typography heavy. And we know one of the hardest things is archiving and having the space to archive. So you're very lucky that, you found institutions that have space to archive these, but, again, what would be completely lost? I think you also told everyone, what I'm impressed by is how much you saved,
yes,
how much you saved in your documentation of how you work. And to some of the students and people here today, rarely do we have the opportunity to save digitally the same way that having actual papers to be saved,
right.
I'm sure they'll all be digitized, but still,
Well, that's what Stanford does. Okay. They have buildings for collections that they go in. So it's an honor, and it hasn't cost me anything. Okay. They want the ephemeral. And the Herb Llewellyn collection is beautiful if you're ever in New York. Okay.
Yes, I've been there. That's how we modeled our archive.
Yeah.
Under the Herb Llewellyn.
Yeah, and Sasha has a whole unit now that he's building for Black designers, and I go in and I'm like lost. Oh my goodness, look at this work, and it's just all of it eye candy. I mean, the whole unit of just when I say graphic design was graphic design, it was like, oh my God, look, it's just beautiful. The Cooper Union.
It's still
and even now, I'm an archivist to my own collection. So on this side of my history, everything that's happening with me, my current books and things and all of the backstory, all the awards and everything, I'm packaging them now so that when I go to Glory, my kids know, just send it to Stanford to match up with the first half of my career. So it's an ongoing process, and it's totally important for my community, because we have history and we have oral tradition. And because of the systemic issues of our industry, we haven't been published. We haven't made the dominant culture broadcast system, if you will. Okay, it's better now, much better. I got a shout out to Meg, I think it's Meg Farmer, who just published her type report 2023. Includes, what a wide palette of a whole entire brand new community doing typography. We have some very, very important books that are coming out, and I'm praying and encouraging academia to now include them on the bibliography. So as a design writer and author, it takes quite some time to get a book published. And so there's incubation of a few really important books that will be coming out AY fall 23. And a part of the work now is, okay, so we have some book tours and you sell the first 90 days. What's important is these books get on the bibliographies and they become required, reading.
Right. I think that's important. And someone asked a question about when will the archives be ready. I know it takes a lot to get an archive catalog.
You can visit them. You can go. And what they do is they have a log of everything that's coming in. They'll pull it out for you. Okay. So they're different designers, not only, the history of Black graphic design, whatever's in there, they have records of what's in. Okay. Has it all been annotated into the repository and so forth and so on. If you want to see, you just contact Regina and she can tell you what's there. They will, bring the things out and you can, observe and Xerox and so forth. So it is accessible.
It's accessible. And I think eventually, what Stanford does and what we try to do here is every time we bring something here, we try to catalog and digitize it. And to answer the question, that takes the time. Digitizing it and having it available to be digitally available without you coming to visit a center, that takes a while. It does definitely takes a while, and that's where the hard work goes in. And I know Samantha Fleming asked this question, and I was going to ask this question to Samantha. Who impressed you as a young designer, even now? Who impressed or inspired you to become a you impressed? You're not impressed by anyone else?
Designing in the dark. No. Let me answer some favorite questions. Did you have a mentor? No. Who'd you collaborate with? People collaborated. Look, I pulled the teams together. I wrote the check. And then wait, my check, okay, the check had my signature on it twice. And the signature line and the check with the routing number. Cheryl D. Miller Design. Okay. I chose people I curated. Why? I was designing in the dark. Nobody wanted to be with me. So if you're gonna do it, girl, I had to do it myself. Who mentored you? Me? Me. Who cared for me? Who cared for me? Me.
And I really think it shows how much there was an island created, especially when you started in design. There was no person but yourself, I think, in the field. And I think it says to everyone how it has changed somewhat, but it's continuing to change, which brings us to the question that Michelle has. I mean, you know, we had this discussion yesterday about technology, and you mentioned briefly how Quark Express and PageMaker and InDesign totally destroyed or disrupted the industry in New York City. It changed how people were able to make a living and couldn't make a living. And, you know, and the field, you know, changed, and we've adapted to our technology as tools. And we discussed this yesterday, Cheryl and I, the same thing with AI. AI is going to be a big disruptor.
Yes,
So,
it is.
You know,
and I've been thinking about it because I've hit these waves before. And I know we chuckled. I hit the wave, first technology. I grew up on gouache and a wooden T-square. And the first thing that hit the industry was magic markers. I was there when magic markers were invented. And then it wiped the gouache out of business. Okay. And I saw New York just fold. The typographers, you know, Quark Express. See, we used to have typographers for decorative type, you know, a house did that, body type. You know, I had catalogs and paper and all kinds of things at resource room in my firm, all these things to do the work. And even the delivery services. You go now, the only delivery service that you see in New York is Uber Eats. But back then it was people, you know, scooting around with camera ready art and, you know, AOL moving a file. Back then it was fast. Whoever thought AOL was moving a printing file, but it wiped out everybody. The delivery service, retouch, airbrush, decorative typeface, body type, businesses, everything gone.
So I think AI is probably I don't know how far away we are from AI and machine learning, you know, but, you know, there are already bots that are working in design and creating design programs. You know, I don't know how soon that'll create such a huge shift for the industry yet again.
I think what we have to do is be prepared for a wipeout. Now, I don't know how long that could take. Okay, so I'm always saying, let's look into the future where we are designers, and let's look into the future when none of this that we know exists. What could that look like? And we were sharing, I was not making jests. It's not going to be long before, you know, I'm going to hologram into a class. That's, you know, they already figured that out. I just don't have the service yet. Okay, I haven't registered yet. All right. And so we can't be naive. And so we have to lean into it. And I think, and on LinkedIn, I said, I'm going to have to sign everything now, made by human hands, copyright 2023, Cheryl D. Miller. Okay. I think it's still going to be, what can you do that you can take ownership in developing your brand? I mean, it's like, if you're Gucci, you want a real bag or a knockoff? You know, we're going to have to work into this design thinking space and imagine what we know is gone and continue to create boldly into that and make new within it, and try to pivot. Well, no, try to pivot. We have to pivot because it's just new and we have to embrace it. We can't be naive. Just like where we are now with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I started this 35 years ago in a conversation. Nobody needed me until now. It took 35 years. I've been, look, guys, I'm a forecaster. I told you this 35 years ago. Okay, right? And every award says that. Cheryl is a visionary. Cheryl, design visionary. Okay, so if I told you 35 years ago that we were going to be here, what I'm sharing with you now is it's going to take the eyes, the designer, the design process, okay, to look deep within to imagine if all this was gone, what can you create now that will be there?
Viable. Yeah.
Yes.
What will be viable, right? Because, and I think that's a good, don't wait and sit back and wait for this to affect you, because it will. I agree with you 100%. You have to say, what am I going to do as a designer? Because this is going to happen. So where do I fit in as a designer, and how do I fit in with the technology? And you're absolutely right. And Cheryl, on that note, I have to say our students have to go to class. I don't think they're your class, but we did great. And I want to thank you so much for this. I promise that I will look you up when I'm in Connecticut, which I will be soon. And I hope that one day you'll be here, not virtually, but in reality. I think Art Center should invite you here. And I think maybe we can give you another honorary degree.
Might as well join the party. Listen, I'm so honored. And if I know everybody's running, but I'll hang here just one second. If anybody else still wants to talk a second, even though you've got your blocks and your schedules, I always like to close the party out just in case there's a question. So I'm appreciative, and every Cliff, Gloria, Sean, it's been real.
Well, thank you.
I'll stay here till all the lights are out here.
Thank you again, Cheryl. Thank you again. I have to thank my staff, as always, at the HNCT. And it's been great working with the graphic design department. I'm glad that we're able to support each other here at Art Center. And thank you everyone for attending. Just to remind everyone, we have another interesting Hello, My Name Is next week with Jimena Gamio, another interesting woman, another woman designer. So how coincidental was that? Not very coincidental. And I think it'll be very interesting. Again, we're changing generations of how people participate. We're changing backgrounds of where people are from. And I think that was one of the points of this, is to introduce our students and our community inside and outside Art Center to see how design is changing and how different communities are affecting how design has changed and what's brought into this. So thank you so much again. It's been terrific.
God bless
everyone next week.
Be safe out there.